There's one player and one area on this team that we're not talking about nearly enough, but today we do talk about them here on Locked On Bearcats.
Our Locked On Bearcats, your daily podcast on the Cincinnati Bearcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you so much for making Locked On Bearcats your first listen of every day. Today we are brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. My name is Alex Frank, your host each and every day here on Locked On Bearcats. Your team every day, free and available everywhere you get your podcast. We, of course, are part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Free and available everywhere you get your podcast and on YouTube, up to 424 subscribers and counting. Subscribe and follow us to get an alert every time we drop a new episode. So there's one player, as I mentioned, that's Ryan Montgomery. And there's one area, that's special teams, the kicking game, that we're not talking about nearly enough for various reasons with both respective player and position. But we're going to talk about them today here in Locked On Bearcats and why they are going to be so important to this team, why they could decide where this team goes this season, what their record is, and if they play for and win a conference championship for the third straight year. So Ryan Montgomery, he's an interesting player because he doubles up as your running back and punt returner. This guy has the potential to be this team's version of Darren Sproles. It feels like we're not talking about him enough. And that's because the running back room has other storylines coming into the season. What's Corey Kiner's role going to be? Can Charles McClellan stay healthy? You know, how much of Ethan Wright IV are we going to see? But we're not talking about Ryan Montgomery. And here's a guy who's been here for 3 years. Here's a guy last year who got a lot of playing time. He had over 300 rushing yards last season. He had 3 rushing touchdowns. He had 46 carries last year. He's returned 60 punts for almost 600 yards in his career. So it feels like Ryan Montgomery is ready to break out this season. He's going into his 4th season. He's a local recruit, Franklin, Ohio. I grew up in the town just next door in Springboro. Very familiar with that area. And I think this year could be the year Montgomery finally breaks out. Now, does that mean he's going to be the lead running back? I don't know. Does that mean he's going to be the next coming of Michael Warren, Jared Dokes, or Jerome Ford? I don't necessarily think that. I don't think Ryan Montgomery fits that prototype of a running back. But what I do believe is this. I believe his versatility can be matched. If it is, this is going to once again be multidimensional. Not just on offense, but overall. They're going to be able to utilize him as a running back, change of pace back. They're going to be able to utilize him as a punt returner. And he's going to be able to shorten the field. When we talk about Montgomery and what he's going to be able to do for this team, it's not just when he's on the field with the offense. You talk about complementary football, and obviously that's the offense and defense. But special teams contributes to that too. If Ryan Montgomery, who averages nearly 10 yards per punt return in his career, and he averaged over 11 yards per punt return last year, if Ryan Montgomery is able to do that, let's say the defense is able to get a 3 and out, and the opposition is punting from its own 30-yard line, and Ryan Montgomery returns a punt from his own 30, let's say it's a 40-yard punt, let's say he returns it from his own 30 to the Bearcats' 40. You're only 10 yards away from midfield. And that's going to allow your offense to open up. You're not going to be backed up on your own 10-yard line. You're going to be, further down the field. You're going to be 2 first downs worth, touchback is 25, almost 2 first downs worth down the field already. That's huge for an offense that's going to be starting a new quarterback, that's going to be having a new number 1 wide receiver. That's huge. And Ryan Montgomery can contribute to that. And then on offense, if Corey Kiner, who should be your lead running back because he fits the prototype, for some reason I love saying the word protege. It's got a nice flow to it, protege. So imagine, if Corey Kiner is your lead running back because he's big, because he fits a Bearcat running back. He's not necessarily, he could be the second coming of the truck, which was Michael Warren's nickname, and he could be like Jared Dokes or Jerome Ford. But Corey Kiner is this big, bulky running back, downhill runner. But you want to change the pace back to keep defenses honest. When we talk about, like I mentioned yesterday, Evan Prater's dual threat dynamic playmaking abilities to keep defenses on their toes and make it hard to stop the Bearcats' offense. Well, it's also, in this case, stopping the running game specifically. Ryan Montgomery is a change of pace back because the Bearcats can utilize him multiple different ways. Whether that's, on a handoff, whether it's a stretch run to the outside or a counter run back towards the inside, whether it's, sending them out for a pass, for pass catching, like Darren Sproles, like Marshall Faulk, like LaDainian Tomlinson, or Matt Forte, or Reggie Bush, or Alvin Kamara, or Christian McCaffrey, running backs like that. Now, I'm not saying Ryan Montgomery is going to be one of those guys this year. He could be, but I'm giving you examples of what it's going to look like with him in the offense this year. And that's going to make defenses hard because they're going to have to keep in mind all these things with the running game, both when it's a run play and when it's a pass. The more weapons you have and the more versatility and options you have with specific players and overall, that makes it hard for a defense to stop you. Why do you think the Bengals drafted Jamar Chase? Not just because he played with Joe Burrow in college, not just because he's this generational, potentially wide receiver, but because he opens up the offense for other players that was already good to begin with. And the same thing is true with Ryan Montgomery with the Bearcats. Ryan Montgomery is going to offset the running backs. Charles McClellan, too. If he can stay healthy, my goodness, you're going to have, you can utilize McClellan, potentially you can send him out wide. You could send Montgomery out wide. You have options galore at this position and on offense overall if Ryan Montgomery is going to have the breakout season that I think he's going to have. He's played behind some great running backs that the Bearcats have had, some of the greatest in the last 15 years. Now, he's got the opportunity to have a significant role on this team, showcasing his versatility. We don't know what the running back room is going to look like this season. I don't. I can say Corey Kiner should be the lead running back, but I don't know who it's going to be. Is there going to be a lead running back? Is this going to be a season where the Bearcats are having a running back by committee approach? I've said that that's fine. At the same time, I've also said I don't think that's the best way to go about things because, when the Bearcats have had success over the last 15 years, they've had a lead running back carry the way, or carry the load and lead the way. Isaiah Pete, Corey Kiner, Michael Warren, Jared Dokes, Jerome Ford, all those guys. So I do think that there should be a lead running back on this team. What is Corey Kiner's role? Does he dominate the running back room? Does he, once again, push Ryan Montgomery further down the depth chart and limit his playing time again? But what Montgomery can do is show a lot of versatility, both as a running back and as a punt returner. Keep defenses on their toes, make it hard to slow down the running game and the offense overall. This offense can be just as good, and this team can score just as many points if we think Montgomery's the player, both as a running back and as a punt returner, that we think he's going to be this season. Coming up, it was the Achilles heel last year. It can't be that this year. I'll explain what that is next, after a word from BetOnline. You see, betonline.net is the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your betting needs. You can find all of your favorite sports and events at the #1 online source for odds, lines, and games. Find reviews and news of every league, including Major League Baseball, NFL, NBA, NHL, combat sports, esports, and even golf. BetOnline continues to be the top online resource for all your sports wagering information, from live in-game betting, scores, and podcasts. They've got you covered. Head to BetOnline today or use your mobile device to learn more about the action happening today. BetOnline, where the game starts. Thanks again for making Locked On Bearcats your first listen of every day on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. The ultimate college football preview is here. It's a 7-episode preview with college experts, local team experts, and Odyssey college football insiders. It's everything you need to be ready for the college football season in just one spot. Search for Ultimate College Football Preview on your Odyssey app, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Alex Frank with you here on Locked On Bearcats, your team every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. So the kicking game last year, whew, I mean, for as good and for as amazing as Evan McPherson was for the Bengals on Sundays, the exact opposite was the case for the Cincinnati Bearcats on Saturdays. My goodness. Here's the worst it got. The worst it got was the AAC championship game. And mind you, I'm on the field for this. So I'm on the field holding the parabolic camera, and Alex Bales lines up for a 23-yard field goal. Bearcats are up 14-13, by the way. They're moving the ball really well. They've got a lot of momentum on offense. And Alex Bales pulls a 23-yard field goal. 23 yards. Misses it. That was as bad as it got. I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. And there was some boos. I heard some boos from the ruckus where I was standing and from all around me and inside Nipper Stadium that day. 9 for 19. That's what this program was on field goals last year. 9 for 19. Cole Smith was 5 of 10. And he wasn't even that good. Now, he made some big kicks in 2020 and 2019. But damn it, he missed a lot of big kicks last year. Sorry if I just said damn it. Hope my grandmother's not listening. She does not like when I say damn or crap for that matter. Anyway, so the straw that broke the camel's back was that field goal. 23 yards. This team right now, it may not be this way at the end of the season, but right now, I can tell you, they are not good enough offensively to overcome the lack of success on special teams. You have to be able to kick field goals. The reality is you're going to be in those situations, and you cannot avoid it. And so I'm watching the Bearcats and the Bengals. I watched every Bearcats game. I watched every Bengals game last year. Every single one of them. And the difference to me was this. When the Bearcats crossed midfield or the 40-yard line, you felt like they had to score touchdowns. Now, that is not just because their kicking game sucked, but it's also because I don't think my grandmother likes when I say sucked either. Anyway, it's also because touchdowns are more points, and the Bearcats had to score points and run up the score to win with style points, and that was how they were going to get into the college football playoff. So there were two reasons why you wanted them to score touchdowns. I wanted them to score touchdowns, but I also mainly wanted them because I knew the kicking game wasn't very good. Both reasons are intertwined with one another. So that was the case with the Bearcats. In the NFL, you don't have to win with style points. Like, I'm watching the Bengals game on Sundays, and when the Bengals cross the 50-yard line or the 40-yard line, I'm like, okay, we're going to score points here. At least 3. When the Bengals were playing the Ravens in week 7, their first points was a 52-yard field goal by McPherson against the Ravens in that defense. And that makes play calling easier. It makes the quarterback's job easier. It makes the offense's job easier because they don't have to revert to passing. They can run the football because they know, hey, we got this. We got 3 points in our back pocket because we're confident in our kicker. It was like that in Denver. A 15-10 win, and Evan McPherson booted a 58-yard field goal right before halftime. The Bengals just needed one play to get into field goal range, get across midfield, get to the 40-yard line, and they were good. That's the difference between the Bearcats and Bengals last year. The Bearcats were not confident in their kicking game. The Bengals were, and it showed with 2 50-plus yard field goals at Tennessee. Every time Tennessee crossed the 50-yard line, they were still playing to score a touchdown, and it showed. And funny how that game was decided by 3 points. How many points is a field goal worth? 3. Back to the field goal game in the Bearcats. There is value in having a kicker. That's the point of this. Especially when you're an offense that's going to have a new quarterback, a new number 1 wide receiver, a new offensive coordinator. When you cross the 40-yard line, Gino knows, Evan knows, or Ben knows, and the offense says, hey, we can call whatever we want. 1st and 10 from the 40-yard line. We can call a run. We can call a pass. It's fine. But the Bearcats run the ball on 1st down. Okay? They can do that. because they know, hey, if we only get 3 yards, we're good. 2nd and 7, we can run it again. We can run a pass. We can run a tight end screen. We can do a lot of things. We don't have to throw 20 yards downfield and worry about a tipped ball and an interception. When you have a new offense and new leaders, that makes it huge. When hey, if we get to the 30-yard line, we're good. And 3 points will add up in a college football game. They absolutely will. It will add up. Bearcats made 2 field goals last year against Navy. Take those 2 field goals away, who knows? The Bearcats still win. And look at games on the schedule this year. When we look at games that could have field goals be a significant factor, I think immediately of Temple in week 11, or 12, 11th game of the season. At Temple, in mid-November, swirling wins at Lincoln Financial against that tough of a defense. 3 points can win you the game. Cincinnati has won games before, 19-16. Look at the game in 2018 against Temple. They scored 17 points. It could have been more, though, if they had a dang kicker. You were not confident when Cole Smith ran out onto the field. So much so, he was demoted in 2019 for Sam Crosa, who was good, but he also had some issues. Cole Smith was 5 of 12 on field goals his first season. You worry about the kicking game with Cincinnati. You really do. You really, really do. This year, though, the hope is you won't. Ryan Coe comes in. He's 26 of 30 in 2 seasons, 43 extra points. The hope is his range and his accuracy is going to give the Bearcats a much-needed lift in the kicking game. There is value in having a kicker. Again, because it allows you to be flexible with your play calling. It lets the offense and the quarterback know, hey, when we cross the 40, we've got some points. We're going to get some points. It stresses the defense, opposing defenses. Opposing defenses struggled against the Bearcats last year because they were so good offensively and they were big plays, touchdowns. But now imagine, hey, we got to make sure this team doesn't get across the 40-yard line. Otherwise, they're going to score 3 points, and that will add up on us. It will add up against Temple. It will add up against Arkansas. It will add up against UCF. That is just the way it goes. I think that's how it's going to be the way it goes in these games. A quarterback knowing that he has 3 points banked in his back pocket every time he crosses the 40-yard line, that is astronomical. It does make a difference. Right now, I don't know if Cincinnati's offense is good enough to overcome a lackluster field goal kicking game again. I do think that they will be a very good offense. I don't know if they're going to score 516 points. I don't know if they're going to score 70 touchdowns. I don't know. But what I do know is, right now, at Arkansas specifically, field goals will matter. I don't care if Arkansas scores 2 touchdowns in their first 2 possessions, and you have to settle for 3. I'd rather be 14-6 than 14-0. 14-6, you could come back from that. 14-0, good luck. Up next, one more position that I think will heavily define this season, plus a look around athletic events happening at the University of Cincinnati this weekend as fall sports season gets underway. But first, I got to tell you what the Locked On Cincinnati Bearcats podcast is supported, or who rather, it is supported in part by. It's supported in part by Debbie Weckstein-Frank. She's a realtor with Coldwell Banker Heritage. And Steve Maloney. He's a lender with Prime Lending. If you're looking for a new home in the Cincinnati and Dayton area, well, I've got the personal real estate team to help you do just that. Let me tell you about Debbie. She specializes in both the Dayton and Cincinnati areas and is a longtime Miami Valley resident who has helped hundreds of people all over the country find and close on their dream home. Then you have Steve, who's also a longtime Miami Valley resident. He specializes in purchases and refinances in over 40 states. 40. Debbie and Steve are available when you need them most, even on evenings, even on weekends, heck, even during a Bearcats game. I guarantee you September 3rd, when the Bearcats play Arkansas, they'll be available for you if you need them. Why? Because they help you make those split-second decisions, getting your offer to the top of the list, taking the guesswork out of the home buying process, because they are a professional real estate team with a track record of success. Call Debbie right now. She's at 937-672-3942. That's 937-672-3942 for more information, or visit Team WECK. That's TEAMWECK.com for more information. Debbie and Steve will help you close on your dream home today. Go Bearcats. The Bearcats' defensive line is a fascinating group to me because there are players who have been here before, but yet I'm not sure if we can 100% yet. I believe in these guys. I believe in Malik Vann. I believe in Jawan Briggs. I believe in Jabari Taylor. But can they be the guys when the game is on the line? And they were last year. Jabari Taylor was against Tulsa. When the game is on the line, can they be the guys who close out the game? I'm talking about bulldozing the offensive line, getting in there for a sack. I'm talking about 4th and 1, like Aaron Donald stuffing the run. I'm talking about, in the fourth quarter when everybody's gassed, can they get a pass rush on the quarterback? That's what I'm looking for from this group. Mick Cronin had a saying. There are guys who get on the bus who will decide whether or not we win. Those players were Gary Clark, Jacob Evans, Kyle Washington, Jaron Cumberland. The players for Cincinnati who have to get on the bus this year and decide whether or not they're going to win. Jabari Taylor, Jawan Briggs, Malik Vann. Those guys, when they get on the bus, they are now determining players whether or not they win on Saturday or whatever day of the week they're playing. When they get on the bus in Fayetteville, those guys will determine on they win. And that is true. The defensive line last year was very good, particularly up the middle. And I think it will be again this year. Where they need to be better is in the run game. We know that. And I'm concerned about that when the Bearcats play Arkansas. We'll touch on that the week leading up to the game. That will actually be Turning Point Tuesday. More on that in just a moment. But this defensive line will be a determining factor for this team this season. Truly believe it will. If those guys are able to win battles in the trenches, stop the run, get to the quarterback, open up, passing lanes or rush lanes for Noah Potter on the defensive end, Wilson Huber, maybe a linebacker, Deshaun Pace coming in up the middle from the linebacker. This group is going to be the leaders of the defense. They're going to be the enforcers, I should say. The leaders of this defense are going to be linebackers. We know that. Secondary is going to have an interesting season, I believe, in terms of development, how the new guys fare. Javon Hicks is going to be that veteran leader. But up front, there's some experience, and those guys are going to have to determine whether or not they are going to win on Sunday or Saturday. That's just the way it is. Last year, those guys were Desmond Ridder, Jerome Ford, and all the 9 NFL draft picks. By the way, 6 of those players were on defense. It's different this year. Because this year, your alpha dogs, you don't know who those are yet, but they are on defense. Up front, they can be. And if they are, this team should be back in position to win a conference championship. Let's not forget, this program has not lost a conference game in 3 years. They have not lost a regular season or conference championship game in 3 years. So this is going to be a very interesting season if they can keep that going. What group is going to determine whether or not they do? The defensive line. All right, so I wanted to do this because, when I was a student at the University of Cincinnati, I loved all the sports. Not just football, not just men's basketball, which I was a commentator, play-by-play announcer for both games. It's not just those. It's women's soccer, It was volleyball. It was baseball. Loved baseball. Loved the game of baseball, especially being from Cincinnati. It's um it's every sport. Tennis, golf. I always made sure during the halftime of every broadcast that I did, during every post game that I did, that um I highlighted the University of Cincinnati other teams besides football and men's basketball. They might be the two most revenue-driven sports. They might be what I talk about the most in this podcast. 99.9% of the time. I will mention other sports, though, in like the very end of each show. You want to hear about football, men's basketball, I understand that. I played the hits just like Mo Egger taught me. But I also look at the other sports. At the time I recorded this, women's soccer had not played their season opener against Northern Kentucky in the Riverboat rivalry. I always loved those games. I have a memorable call of Jill Vitteri's game-winning goal, sophomore year, 2018, August. Yours truly and Ethan Bastian, my friend Ethan Bastian, who worked for me at Bearcats Media. He and I called that game from a parking garage. That was when we had the old equipment, and that was fun. That was my first year as sports director. It was a blast. Loved it. So there's that. At the time, again, that I recorded this, don't know the result, but I have a lot of respect for the women's soccer program, have a lot of respect for Neil Stafford, what he's done as head coach, have a lot of respect for Vanessa DiNardo. I truly have an appreciation for her. When we talk about faces of the university, we talk about Evan Prater, Ben Bryant, we talk about Josh Wiley, Leonard Taylor, we talk about David DeJulius, we talk about Wes Miller, Luke Fickle, we talk about Scott Googans. I put Vanessa DiNardo up there with them because what she has meant to this university through a horrific tragedy of her best friend and teammate, Ali Sedlowski, what she meant to the women's soccer program through that time and coming back for her fifth season as a senior, fifth-year senior, she is one of the toughest and one of the most recognizable leadership faces this university has in its athletic department today. Wherever she goes after this season, if she stays with the program to be a coach or in some other capacity, or maybe in the athletic department, you know you've got someone very, very good in your corner, Vanessa DiNardo. A lot of respect for her. Women's soccer last night against NKU. Then on Sunday, you've got women's soccer taking on Michigan State at Gettler Stadium. That's Sunday at 1. I always loved the Sunday fun days, the Sunday day games. Some of them were very, very hot. My very first ever game that I covered for the News Record. This is a true story. Now I'm just having fun 2 weeks before the season starts. Hope you, if you've stayed and are listening to this point in the show, which you should be anyway, thank you. So, very first game I ever covered in August of 2017 for the News Record. This is my first journalistic assignment at Cincinnati. I covered women's soccer against Boston University. And it was, as Neil Stafford says, hot as hell. 90 degrees. I had just run 17 miles. That's actually a true fact. I did. And I didn't even end up running that marathon. You know, college and life got in the way. So I covered that game. It's hot. Everyone's tired. And they win that game 2-0. But I just loved the Sunday fun day. You know, playing on Sundays during the day. You know, the game ends at 3. You got your whole afternoon ahead of you. So that was fun. So that's Sunday. Then you've got next Thursday, the 25th, you got women's soccer at Bowling Green. That's at Bowling Green. Bowling Green's a nice little campus. They have a good restaurant there called Pizzanello's. Very good subs. Women's volleyball is hosting the UC tournament next Friday, the 26th. They'll take on Illinois State at 11. They'll take on Dayton at 6:30. Then on the 28th, which is the last two events, women's volleyball will take on Florida State in the UC tournament at 1, and then women's soccer at 1 o'clock at the same time. They'll take on Murray State at home. And then, before you know it, we get to September 1st. Obviously, you know what September 3rd is. Football at Arkansas. September 3rd, you got women's soccer taking on Stony Brook, the Sea Wolves at 11:30. It's an 11:30 a.m. game. Interesting. That's on Thursday the 1st. Women's volleyball has 2 matches on Friday the 2nd. At the BYU tournament in Provo, Utah, they'll take on Pitt at noon Eastern, and then BYU at 9 Eastern, and then they'll take on again on the 3rd. So after football, you can watch them take on Utah State at the BYU tournament in Provo, Utah. So, a lot of events coming up. Great time of year. Best of luck to Neil Stafford of the women's soccer program. Best of luck to Molly Alvey, head coach of women's volleyball. A lot of respect for her, too. Very, very fun to be around. Every coach at Cincinnati, and this is why I chose to go to school there. This is why I'm proud to be a Bearcat, proud to be a Bearcat alum, proud to be a third-generation Bearcat alum. It's because of coaches like Luke Fickle, Molly Alvey, Wes Miller, Neil Stafford, Scott Guggens, and the swimming, lacrosse, tennis, all the coaches in Cincinnati, phenomenal, and that I've interacted with. Incredible. Eric Toth, tennis, I've interacted with him. All good stuff. All right, now, what's coming up next week and, 2 weeks from now on Locked On Bearcats? Well, again, don't forget to subscribe to the Locked On Bearcats on Twitter, YouTube, up to 424 subscribers and counting. Don't forget to follow us, too, to get an alert every time we drop a new episode. And you can follow me on Twitter at Frankie_90 with 2 N's, NNATI. You can follow me on Instagram, AlexFrank9_, or email me at alex3frank@gmail.com. Next week, we've got season previews 5 different ways. The offense. Can they be as prolific as last year? What they have to do to be as prolific. Defense. How does the cornerback room replace 2 All-Americans? Who steps up as the leader? How good can the linebackers be? Then we've got an All-Bearcats show. Me, Russ Heltman, James Rapine, the All-Bearcats crew. Maybe Jeff Carr will join us as well from Locked On Reds. I'd love to get him on. Season preview with all of us. Then we've got the 700 WLW crew. Dan Horde, Jim Kelly Jr., and Mo Egger. Still working on getting them on the show. All 4 of us will preview the season from the broadcast team's perspective. Then, working on getting Chris Vanini from The Athletic. Covers college football, primarily the group of 5 for The Athletic. His thoughts on the Bearcats. Can they be the top group of 5 team for the 3rd straight year? Are there any teams like UTSA who pose a challenge? Maybe BYU. Maybe Houston. Are there any teams in the group of 5 who pose a challenge to the Cincinnati Bearcats? Then game week. We've got Williams Wednesday with Justin Williams working on that. Crossover Thursday, we'll have that with Josh Neighbors, Locked On Arkansas. Game preview on Friday. My keys to the game, matchups to watch, where this game will be decided, the Bearcats at Arkansas, and my score prediction. My season preview and record prediction show, that's going to be Monday, August 28th. You will not want to miss, the 29th. You will not want to miss that. Turning Point Tuesday, that's going to be a theme this season. Turning Point Tuesday, the turning points of the offseason and how it's led us to where we are just with football around the corner. This is fun. Every show now, I know what the show is going to be about. I don't have to grind and dig and go to the tiniest crumb in the cookie jar that Cookie Monster sent me to get content. No. I've got it. And I can't wait to give it to you, and I can't wait to have you listen. More subscribers, more exposure for this podcast. Thank you for how do I say this? Thank you for coming along, for hopping on over the last 8 months. How many months has it been? 8 months plus, and getting this podcast through the off season. Thank you, sincerely. Because we are in season mode right now. We've been in season this whole month in terms of a college channel on Locked On. But the season starts for me Monday. And I cannot wait to be with you for this season. And I can't wait for you to join along. You know, you can always engage with me in conversation on Twitter, Instagram, whatever. So make sure you eat your Built Bars, hashtag not sponsored right now. Make sure you keep beating them, because we're gearing up for the season. As I said to myself in late July, it's go time. And I can't wait to do this with all of you. For the Locked On Bearcats podcast, my name is Alex Frank. Have a great weekend. The Bengals take on the Giants in the preseason. Game 2, Sunday at 7. Catch that game live on NFL Network or on ESPN 1530, 700 WLW, and 1027. Actually, I don't know if it's going to be on 700 WLW. It may not. But for sure, ESPN 1530 and 1027 WEBN. So can't wait to have... Well, I think 700 WLW will carry it. So they will. So that's where we're at. So you can get you on all 3 channels. Starting at 7, Dan Hoare, Dave Lapham on radio, Mike Watts, Anthony Munoz, Marissa Contapelli on TV. I'm just promoting stuff now, as I've been doing for the last 10 minutes. But have a great weekend. Stay safe, stay healthy, eat those Built Bars, and I'll be back on Monday with the offensive preview for this upcoming season. For the Locked On Bearcats podcast, I'm Alex Frank. Thank you for being with us through this offseason. I'll be back on Monday in season mode. First up, opening kickoff, the offensive preview for the season. Have a great rest of your day and weekend, and I will be back on Monday here on Locked On Bearcats, your first listen every day, free and available everywhere you get your podcast and on YouTube. Your team every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thank you for listening. Have a great rest of your day and weekend.